Right, let's go team by team then. So let's rewind to G2 a second, right? There's actually a topic that I'm going to bring up with you, but I'm going to set up my point and then we'll pivot into it. So it goes like this. The reason why I don't even have G2 top 2, spoiler, I have Fnatic and Rogue top 2, and I'll get to who I have as my number 1 in a second. But basically, the reason why I actually have G2 third, by the way, similar to where I probably would have had them overall in playoffs LEC last split, except that obviously before caps popped off, I thought maybe Vitality could edge them if they played them, right? The reason why I sort of have demoted them back to that status is because I think one thing you can't do in esports, but people do it all the time, is they act like form carries over directly between each match and each tournament and each month. I don't think it works that way. Like, form's way more up and down to me because it's to do with so many different factors in the game. It's to do with the meta, which teammates you have, how your teammates play, how you coached. There's a million psychological factors. So one problem I have, right, is people will take like, this guy played like this and they'll make it that he's going to do it again. Like, in the same way as in a second I'll be generous with that principle. You can't apply that to caps. Like, the caps that monster stomped the playoffs of LEC, that was months ago, and that was a different meta and a different guy. Like, I don't know if he's going to do the same thing this time around. In fact, I even thought at MSI, something I found a bit disturbing, Dom, is all the games where they didn't play around him and give him the carry picks, it looked shit again. Not him individually, but the team looked shit. Like, they just looked super whack. They couldn't beat RNG and T1 in these matches. Like, those squads just looked way better. So my problem is this. I think the caps factor boosted them a bit. Already, I don't know how much that'll be equivalent, because here's the thing, to contrast to what you just said, I expect the upcoming meta, and especially the tenacity stuff, I think that will actually make players like Humanoid and Larson more impactful. I think it makes someone like Caps less. I'm sorry, it just does. Like, his style and what he's at the best at the moment at is, if you give him a champion that does insane like burst damage or like physical damage, he's a fucking monster. Those aren't going to be the champions, as far as I can tell. That'll be the most meta dominant champions. So the problem is, if you take the Caps factor off the table, like, he can't do what he did in spring and just win every series for you. Suddenly, I think they have issues with their laners, dude, because one, I'll just throw this out there. I know everyone gets so upset. You know, when people got mega upset on Twitter that before the split, H2K Rich said that there was like 20 ERL ADCs he'd take over Flackhead. I'll go one further if you fans want the truth. Flackhead isn't even a top 100 ADC in the world, assuming I can take LPL and LCK level players that don't play in LPL and LCK. This guy's not even relevant as a world-class player. Why are we playing this silly game when we take someone who, as far as I can tell, Dom, I actually think this guy gets League of Legends. I think he gets that he's not supposed to be the carrier of this team. He gets that he's sort of a supportive ADC. He's like Kobe Light. He's just playing for the late game when he has a chance and his champions come online and do some damage. He plays with a wicked fucking support. So, to me, he can't be your primary carry. You're not going to win the split through Flackhead. So there's one name left, and this is where I want to pivot and ask you something. Because I'll tell you what, Dom, I know he's your boy, and he has had actually generally a pretty underrated career, but I thought Broken Blade was fucking garbage at MSI, mate. Like, as soon as they banned on, he had a really bad time. And the problem with this is this, Dom. I thought this was a tournament where he could have fucking dominated. There was a lot of whacker. Like, that Bin guy is garbage, mate. I don't get that. That was years ago he was good on tuning. The guy is fucking trash. Like, I thought he was going to style on these guys. I thought he even might have had a chance against Zeus, mate. He was really underwhelming me at MSI. So I'm a bit concerned. And like, again, like I said, I'll be generous. I'm not going to take it that his form's identical to MSI. It's a different tournament, obviously. But that concerned me a bit because, like, in the spring, they had to play through him a lot to be as good as they were, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, the meta was just not good for BB, and I think that BB needed to commit more into being the player that he is, and not just try to like adapt to what the meta of MSI was. When I think about when he was the most successful in LEC this split, when he looked the absolute best, it was when he was playing ochs on top. No one else was playing ochs on top.
Yes.
And like Tryndamere, even when people were like still on the edge about like, oh, is Tryndamere good? Is it not? Like, he would just pick it and counterpick everyone. I wanted to see that type of BB where he plays the champions that he's good at and he doesn't force himself like to be the 4th best Gwen in the tournament or like the 5th best GP in a tournament. Like, those are just not his champions. Like, he can play like every now and then. I just don't want that to be the core of his champion pool where like, if GP is up, he's taking it versus Gwen. Like, I don't want that to be the counter. Like, there's a lot of things that counter Gwen. And I think that one of the interesting parts about BB, the best part about his play to me is that he can actually play everything. Like, he might not be able to play meta champions at a super high level, but he can play the counters to meta champions at a super high level. Like, he'll always have a couple picks. Like, it's not that he can play every champion in the game. It's just that he can play a few champions in the game into everything.
Were you a bit underwhelmed then that he had problems? Like, obviously he didn't himself play the Gwen and then he didn't really have the counters. Did you have issues with that one specifically? It's a bit of a specific case, obviously, you know.
I had issues with it, but I think I had more like issues with the team because it felt like they just weren't willing to, you know, really be themselves in those games. Like, I mean, they gave him like the Riven counter pick once, which didn't look good. And I think that they kind of just like lost faith in like the picking crazy counters into the meta top laners of that tournament. So I had issues with that. I think it was more like just their team in general. I mean, no one really looked good once they started losing. As soon as they started dropping games, like they literally lost to everyone, including like the fucking Buffalo and all these
everyone,
fucking teams. PCS twice. They lost to PSG two times. Then they got 3-0'd hard as fuck by T1. Didn't look competitive in any of the games. His Scion game I actually thought was good. That was like the only game that they almost won, was when he had like that nice Scion prediction on like Faker's Distortion over the wall. But just in general, I just feel like they really lost confidence in their play. But yeah, I mean, to me, I think that he didn't have a good tournament. But I think overall, like I don't really worry about him being able to figure it out. Like even if he has periods where he's not playing at the highest level possible, I feel like BB is the type of player that will always just figure out how to be useful and end up overperforming. So to me, I think that he's just proven like his ability to learn and adapt over the courses of metas. And I think especially for tournaments like LEC, I think he'll be fine because MSI is very specific. Like when you think about it, you're really just playing one patch for a month. Like you almost never do that outside of playoffs. Like and in terms of like LEC, you're going to be playing within the context of only other LEC teams. So if something comes up that's OP, like everyone will generally pick it up at the same time. It's not the style clash that you get when you go into Worlds or MSI where teams have completely different reads on metas generally. And you go to MSI and you might have your ideas of how a champion matchup is supposed to play. And then once you start getting exposed to different ideas, like, oh, well, what happens if the enemy team like picks a prio bot lane and they can roam their support? Or what happens if they're like good at stacking waves and they actually dive with 2 or 3 people on like my champion's weak points? How does the game play out then? And like, are those situations reproducible enough to warrant us completely changing our style? I feel like MSI and Worlds are generally harder for Western teams just because of that. Because it feels like they just don't have the time to like adapt. But I think within LEC, I think he'll figure it out and be useful. But about the Flakked point that you made, I think that Flakked, so he's obviously not like a super insane laner, which I don't think anyone expected him to be. I mean, this is the problem whenever somebody does well and they're also popular, is like they become just, it's almost like Adam 2.0, except I think Flakked is actually better than Adam. I think he's more legit than Adam was, but it's another thing where just because Flakked did well in LEC playoffs and, you know, he had a good understanding of the meta, he played really well with Targamas in late in a few matches, like the idea that he's just better than players like Upset right off the bat, I can't.
Oh, how can you abide with that opinion? I know exactly. Just doesn't work, does it?
I mean, Upset loses. His support completely runs it down. His mid runs it down. You would think that Upset just chain fed and just solo lost the series. They're like, look, he's playing for KDA. It's like, spoiler, if you're playing an AD carry and your whole team is fucking into, you can't do anything in competitive. Like, you literally just can't do anything. There's no like, oh, well, I'm going to save the game at this point. And like, no, you're fucked. Like, that is just what happens. So to me, I think that that Flakked, honestly, like, he overperformed expectations in spring, clearly. And I think that he's got a couple qualities that I really respect in a player. Like, he looks like he's relatively clutch. He looks like he rises to the occasion.
Yeah, that's true.
Most of the time, which to me is like, I'm like, oh, that's a good point. Also, he doesn't have that dumb AD carry characteristic. Like, he'll play like some like not great games, but he doesn't just randomly fucking run it down when he gets fed. Like, he knows how to stay alive. So I'm actually like pretty happy with his play. I mean, obviously the community is overhyping him, but I think that like his trajectory looks really good. Like, I think he's much better than what I thought he would be, especially considering the people that follow ERLs that I talked to. It seemed like even people that were following Spanish League thought that he would be much worse in competitive in LEC than he was.
Actually, by the way, the part I find weird about this one, the way I would contrast it with the Adam one is, at least on the Adam one, there actually were some people I respected were trying to tell me he was really good, which I never really bought, but fair enough, different perspective. It's like what you say about the Flakked one. As far as I can tell, Flakked is actually being unfairly scrutinized because of stupid fans, either from his country or of his team. Like, if it wasn't for those fans, if you remove the fans of Flakked, generally, there aren't loads of people who are pros and coaches like, this guy's secretly actually fucking amazing. Like, they're all just like we are. They're like, actually, you know what, fair play. He's actually a bit better than I thought. Didn't know if he was G2 material, but he's sort of fitting the team well. Like, what the problem is, this is where fans are what ruin the bloody game. If the fans weren't there, we'd only be giving this guy praise. is. Like, by the way, the fact that I don't say he should be cut from the team should tell you something, fans. Like, notice I don't say boot him and get like another, like, get any of my mates that are ADC and ARL. Like, I'll give him another split. He deserves a split. Like I said, the thing I like is, like, he knows which way his bread's buttered, mate. He isn't trying to pretend he's the super carry. He's not like Jackie Love on IG, where he thought that, like, what do you mean this is a solo lane team? Like, I'm the carry of this team, right, bro? It's like, you've got the shy and oozy, mate. Like, you are never the carry. You have to understand that, Jackie Love. This guy gets that. That's what you're saying there about how he's like, if he has the resources, he's super responsible with it. That's good. I like that. I don't want people like Kazi just fucking into the way of the shit when we give him, like, we played for his lane, gave him his champ. That happens. I hate that dude. That's a good contrast, even. If you give me the choice between those two players, I need to build a very special type of built team around Kazi. I can just slot Flackhead in as my tertiary carry. I bet you work in most teams. Looks pretty good.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.